that show why it really is mountaintop removal. This is here on Mars Hill. This is what they do when they go to the tops of these mountains. They blast them off, they remove the material, they dig huge holes, pour, hundreds of cubic yards, thousands of cubic yards of concrete, and they just really tear up the mountains. And if you want to just pass that around, just make sure I get it back, take a look at it. That's on Mars Hill. This is up on the Kibbe Mountains, where they also have an industrial wind plant. And you can see that this is not a benign, simply put up a few turbines. This is a real blast away, create thousands of miles, hundreds of millions of cubic yards of debris that's come from the blasting and the moving of material. In the Highland project alone, it's estimated that they will move and blast out 1.6 million cubic yards of material. That's enough to fill 100,000 truckloads. And if you lined all those trucks up, they would stretch from the Bigelow Preserve all the way down to North Carolina. Now that's interesting because you know what North Carolina did? It passed a moratorium on building wind turbines on tops of its ridges. And you know why they did that? They did that because of the fact that they realized the economic engine for their state are their mountains, and they wanted to protect that economic engine. Since this is only 7 minutes and I'm running out of time and I could talk about a lot of other things, I do want to show you two other photographs. This is a photograph from the Appalachian Trail. This is a photograph of where one of the turbines will sit in the Highland Mountains if they're constructed. And this is the Bigelow Preserve over here. So you can see how close that's going to be. You can pass that one back too for people who want to take a look at it. This is another photograph from the Appalachian Trail looking back at Stewart Mountain. There will be turbines all along here. These 48 turbines that are scheduled to potentially go up there will have as many as 35 lights. So the night sky will be completely altered. In the Western Mountains, you will see this from virtually almost anywhere in the Western Mountains. In addition, the noise that's generated by these turbines is extremely disturbing, and there's good scientific evidence to point that it has major impacts on breeding behavior, feeding behavior of wildlife. And although there's only a few of us local residents up there, the impact of the noise on local residents will be significant. And I'm sure as we get questions, we'll be able to discuss in more detail the data that points to the fact that wind turbines are a complete nuisance in terms of noise. And I've finished 7 minutes. I could have gone on for another hour.
Thank you, Jonathan Collins. Thank you, Jonathan. Next is Representative Peter Kent.
Good evening. I guess I have to speak fast. I want to start by acknowledging the representative of the district we are in right now, who is active at a national level with alternative energy as it relates to national security, and he also has introduced legislation in Maine that deals with alternative energy, and that's Representative Alex Cornell DeHoot. Okay, I feel at home here. I have a studio in the basement. I've had a studio here for 8 years. I feel like you've all come to my place. So to a degree, I'm very comfortable with that. 2 years ago, it's likely that you would have found me buried behind locked doors in my studio downstairs. I'm a sculptor. And I work with machines, and I work behind headphones. I work with masks on. It's probably about as far from being a public personality or an advocate for much other than my own personal private vision. And it's really interesting to me tonight to be here carrying a public vision. And 3 guesses which is harder to do. A public vision is really difficult to push. And it really makes me think of the artist Christo, who many of you may have heard of. How many have heard of Christo? A lot of you. Running the fence and the gates down in New York. And I will never forget something I read that he said many years ago when he was doing running fence, which ran maybe 50 miles across the coastline of California. He said it wasn't the end product. What was really the art and the challenge and the fascination and interest to him was the process it took to run that fence 50 miles across California, and all the conflicts, the local conflicts. One farmer pitted against another. There were community meetings. It went on and on. You had to get state approval. There were regulatory issues, financial issues. And then there's the issue that the state wanted it because it would bring tax dollars and money. And the point being that we're doing well here tonight because we're in the middle of that exact same process. I think all of us can agree that we need a strong, powerful vision for alternative energy and renewable energy in this, not only in this state, but in this country and on this planet. And the process is going to be a long one, and there's going to be a lot of debate, and a lot of people like yourselves are going to show up and speak your mind, and in the end, we will have a product. And it was interesting to me tonight to read in one of the press releases that I was on the side. And I don't really feel like I'm on the side, and I don't really think that, I think my sense of what I know about each individual here is that we agree that we need renewable energy. And I don't know that anyone would say wind energy is not a piece of that vision, at least a piece of that vision. I think where the disagreements come are in how much of the farm are we going to sell in the process, and how much of an impact are we going to allow, how much regulation are we going to allow, how much is it going to cost, and those are important. Why am I here? How did I get here? I ran a campaign 2 years ago. I walked out of the studio and I went to 2,000 households, and I had 2,000 conversations that lasted anywhere from 10 minutes to half an hour. And by the end of those conversations, you're left with a harmonic of where people are at. And I felt that the one thing people were lacking was a sense of a vision for not only themselves, but the state. They wanted to know what was going on in Augusta. Where are we going? You know, they had no sense of the future. And I thought about that for a long time. I went up to Augusta and I asked, what's the vision? Where's the vision department? And nobody really could tell me. And I've got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to speed it up. I ended up meeting a man, Javi Dauber, and I listened to his talk about wind energy, and that vision about offshore wind energy appealed to me. And I think it's a good cultural vision. I think it's a good political vision. It's a good policy vision. It's a good vision for us, and I think we need to pursue it. I think that there are going to be roadblocks. There's going to be difficulties. There's no question about that. And I'm working as hard as I can to make this a cultural vision. I'm working with Javi Dauber right at this point, visiting high schools, having assemblies, talking to K through 12 kids about the future in Maine for energy. I'm talking about that Maine, which has clung to its natural resources to its detriment for so long, has finally found a piece of its natural resources that it can tap into and use and save that history, that legacy of natural resources that we have clung to for so long. And I think it's a perfect vision for Maine. It suits us. It fits us like a glove. And yes, there are details that have to be worked out, and I think we will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter Kent. Next, Angus King.